Hey guys, welcome to another calculus video. Today we're going to be talking about finding the derivative using the definition. In the last video we kind of discovered the definition of derivative, which is f prime of x equals the limit as h goes to 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. So today we're going to be using this definition and we're going to start plugging in our functions and solving for what the derivative is. Now, one thing I want to make clear before we start is when you have a limit, you should always start by plugging in your limit variable. But in this video, I'm not going to do that because I know that we're going to end up with 0 over 0 in the case of the difference quotient. And also, whenever you start a new step, you should always copy down your limit symbol, but I'm also not going to be doing that just for sake of time. Okay. So we're going to find f prime of x where f of x equals x squared. So let's start by just plugging this into our formula. Squared minus x squared all over h. So to start, I'm just going to start by multiplying out x plus h squared. So we're going to end up with x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus x squared. These x squareds are going to cancel. And now I'm going to factor the top because I want to eliminate this h in the bottom. So I'm going to factor out an h here. Beautiful. So now we can cancel this h, and we're left with just 2x plus h. Now we know h is 0, so our answer is 2x. So this is the derivative of x squared. Now let's look at what does this mean. So let's imagine we have a graph of y equals x squared. If we were to plug in, say, x equals -1, that's going to be a point right here, then we would draw a line with slope. If we plug in x equals -1 to f prime of x, we're going to get -2. Draw a line with slope of -2. Now, of course, this is best done on graph paper. So if you were to do that, you would find that the line would actually match the slope of the curve at that point. Okay, let's move on to our next problem. Now we're going to do f of x equals 2x cubed minus 2x plus 4, and we're going to find f prime of x. Okay, so immediately I can see these 4's are going to cancel, but I'm going to start multiplying out all of these terms. So this is going to be x cubed plus 3x squared h plus 3 h squared x plus 3h cubed. I'm just going to multiply 2 by all of those. And I figured this out just by using Pascal's triangle and the rule for binomials. That's just going to be minus 2x minus 2h. Okay, let's start canceling. So 2x cubed is going to cancel with 2x cubed over here, and 2x here is going to cancel with this 2x. Now everything that we have left is has h in it, so we can just divide everything by h. So we're going to cancel an h with all of these terms, so 6x squared plus 6xh plus 2h squared minus 2. Okay, now let's plug in h equals 0. These two terms are going to disappear. And our answer is 6x squared minus 2. So the derivative of this function is 6x squared minus 2. Alright, let's move on to our next problem. Now we have f of x equals 1 over x, or the reciprocal function. Let's find the derivative. So although the strategy isn't always clear when we have a difference quotient, for example, here we have like 1 over x plus h minus 1 over x. That's not really easy to simplify and cancel. However, the best thing to do is to try and get it into as simple a form as possible in the numerator and then worry about the denominator after. Because generally, once we simplify the numerator, we'll end up with an h that we can cancel in the bottom, and then we can just plug in h equals 0 for everything else. So I'm going to start by getting these two to have the same denominator. So I'm going to multiply by x over x and x plus h over x plus h. So on the bottom, we're going to have h times, and then our denominator is going to be x times x plus h. Okay, now on the top, x times 1 is x, and -1 times x plus h is negative x minus h. So these x's are going to cancel, and this is going to become negative h over h, so we can cancel that. It's just going to become -1 over x. I'm going to multiply this out, x squared plus xh. Now we plug in h equals 0, this disappears, and our answer is -1 over x squared. Great. Alright, let's move on to the next problem. Of course, if you think I'm going too fast, feel free to slow down the video or pause, and before I start solving each problem, feel free to pause the video and try by yourself, because practice is always better than just watching a video. Okay, let's look at f of x equals square root of x. Okay, as we talked about in our last video, if you're not sure what to do and you have square roots in the top, always multiply by the conjugate. Okay, so on the top we're going to have this squared minus this squared, so we're going to end up with x plus h minus x over h times square root x plus h plus square root of x. These x's are going to cancel, and this h is going to cancel with this h, so we're just going to end up with 1 over square root x plus h plus square root x. Plug in h equals 0, and we get 1 over 2 square root x. Amazing. So the derivative of f of x equals x square root of x is f prime of x, 1 over 2x. All right. Now we're going to do f of x equals cube root of x. And remember, before I start solving the problem, feel free to try by yourself. Just pause the video and give it a try. Sorry, I forgot the limit symbol. Cube root of x plus h minus cube root of x over h. Okay, now here it at first seems like maybe we should try multiplying by the conjugate, but the problem here is if we multiply by the conjugate, on the top we'll still end up with x plus h to the 2/3 minus x to the 2/3, and that's not helpful. We need to find something that'll make it cubed. So I'm going to call this a and this b. So we have a minus b, and we want to get to a cubed minus b cubed, because once we can do that, we can cancel the x's and we'll have an h in the top that we can cancel in the bottom. So I want to multiply a minus b times some g of x so that it'll equal this. So g of x is going to be a cubed minus b cubed over a minus b. Now if you remember the difference of cubes factoring pattern, we know that g of x is going to just be a squared plus ab plus b squared. So let's just plug this in. So a squared plus ab plus b squared. And let's start multiplying by this in our limit. So we're going to multiply by a squared, which is x plus h to the 2/3 power, plus ab. So that's going to be the cube root of x plus h times x squared, times x, which is just going to be x squared plus xh, plus x to the 2/3 power. We're going to multiply also by this whole thing in the bottom, which I'll just leave blank here just to save space. So when we multiply this, we're going to end up with, as we said before, x plus h minus x over h times this whole thing, which is, so these x's are going to cancel and these h's are going to cancel, so we're just going to end up with 1 over this. Now if you look at this closely, you can see when we plug in h equals 0, this is going to become x to the 2/3 plus x to the 2/3, and also if we plug in h equals 0 here, this is also x to the 2/3. So our final answer is going to be 1 over, and these are all x to the 2/3, so 3 times x to the 2/3, which can also be written as 1 over 3 cube root of x squared. And that's our answer. Okay, next problem. Now we have a bit of a more complex thing. We have the derivative of square root of x squared minus 1. Let's just jump right into it. F prime of x equals limit as h goes to 0, square root x plus h squared minus 1 minus square root x squared minus 1 all over h. We're going to start multiplying by the conjugate because that's what we always do when we see square roots. Okay, so on the top we're going to end up with this squared minus this squared, which is going to be x plus h squared minus 1 minus x squared plus 1, ones are going to cancel, over h times square root x. Okay, so I don't want to write this all out again, so I'm going to just write this over here. The numerator here is going to be x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus x squared. We cancel those, and we're going to cancel with the h, all of these h's. So we're going to end up with 2x plus h over square root x plus h squared minus 1 plus square root x squared minus 1. And we're going to plug in h equals 0. So when we plug in h equals 0 in the denominator here, this is also going to be x squared minus 1. So it's going to be over 2x squared minus 1. And in the numerator, we're just going to end up with 2x. We can cancel these 2's. So our answer is going to be x over square root x squared minus 1. That's the derivative of square root of x squared minus 1. All right, last problem for today. This one's going to be a little bit of a biggie and something that you'll probably encounter in your calculus class. So we're going to calculate f prime of x for f of x equals sine of x. These are two things that we need to know. The limit as theta goes to 0 of sine of theta over theta equals 1, and the limit as theta goes to 0 of 1 minus cosine theta over theta equals 0. Okay. Another thing we're going to need to know is you need to know the sine angle addition formula, which is the formula for sine of a plus b equals sine a cosine b plus cosine a sine b. Okay, let's move on. So, pay close attention, and of course, as always, try and figure this out by yourself at first. Okay, as I said, we're going to start by using the sine angle addition formula. So we're going to end up with sine of x cosine of h plus cosine of x sine of h minus sine of x. Now I'm going to factor everything here. So I'm going to separate cosine x and sine x. So sine x is going to end up being sine of x, and as you can see we have cosine h minus 1 all over h. So I'm going to just bring this outside of the limit. Sorry, I did a lot of steps there, but just so you can see, sine of x got factored out of cosine h minus 1 to sine of x, right, over h, and so this is our limit. Now we're also going to factor out cosine x, so as you can see this is what we're going to have. So plus cosine x times this limit, which goes to 0, sine of h over sine of h over h. Now, as I just said, this limit evaluates to 0, so this is all going to be 0, and on the previous slide also, this limit evaluates to 1. So our answer is cosine of x. Now, that was probably a lot of steps and a lot of thinking, but hopefully you understood it, and if not, there's plenty of other videos out there and plenty of other interpretations. But all in all, I hope this video and these demonstrations helped you. Now we're going to look here. These are some extra practice problems. I encourage you to try these by yourself. Just plug it into the formula for f prime of x and solve. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next one.